I was just petrified on a level that was so cellular that there was nothing that was going to pull me out of it, because I was getting EpiPenned multiple times a week, and towards the end there, like, I couldn't sleep. I was on so many narcotics and things to make me go up and down, and there was nothing that was going to help besides me realizing that I was actually held by God the whole time, and that I was actually divinely safe, and there was a plan, but also there was peace, and I needed to be able to feel that in my body and understand that there wasn't anything to be afraid of. And that took a near-death experience and heart attack to get that into my nervous system.
Welcome back to the Daily Surrender. I am so excited for today's podcast guest. I have Ally Whelehan on the podcast. Ally is a former client of mine, a soul sister, and a young woman who has been through an extraordinary journey with her health, and a journey that has led her to so much wisdom about the human experience, how to live oftentimes with pain and rise up above it, not engage in it, not have the pain amplified by our thoughts. In the years that I worked with Ally in a one-on-one coaching relationship, I stood witness to Ally's process. She came to me as a young woman in college with a diagnosis of Lyme disease. She struggled with histamine and mast cell activation, with dysautonomia, with chronic neuropathy. She was actively still struggling with an eating disorder that started at age 12 and was bulimic when we started together. Her periods created excruciating pain for her. And Ally had been to a lot of different medical professionals and practitioners throughout the world, really, when she landed here on my runway. And because God is in everything, Ally became a teacher for me. I learned so much in our work together about the mind-body connection, about the root cause drivers of the dysregulation, the dis-ease that often shows up for us. And we're going to touch on that in today's episode as Ally shares some of her story. I have a feeling Ally will be a guest multiple times on the podcast, but Ally has a very powerful message to share with us about breaking the cycle of dysregulation when we're in excruciating pain of any sort. It might be physical pain. It might be a disease diagnosis. It might be a season of life where everything is falling apart. Maybe there's unemployment. Maybe you're having a panic attack. If you are a human, you have struggled at some point in your life, and you will again, with pain. And this episode will have you walking away with perhaps a new perspective on how to break the cycle so that you're not amplifying and ramping up the pain, but rather riding the waves in faith and trust. Ally gives us a very powerful visualization at the end. So hang tight for that. That will be something that you might want to come back to and use and integrate into your own human experience. So without further ado, I introduce you to this beautiful, young, wise woman. Welcome to the podcast, Ally.
Thanks for having me.
This is so fun. I have known since I started this podcast that you would be on it. And when I asked you to be on it a few weeks ago, I know there was some hesitancy because you're not in a season right now where everything is perfect. And the perfection in that, it has become our theme for today's podcast, which I think is extra beautiful.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. It's all has as it should be. So, Allie, as I've already shared with our listeners, you and I got hooked up together on this journey through our human existence about 6 years ago when you were a college student. So, today, coming from where you are today, Allie, share a little bit more about who Allie was back then versus who Allie is today. And your level of awareness, because I can stand witness, I have stood witness to, and I can attest to how much more aware you are today of truth, of who you are, and how much more you love yourself today. But share a little bit of that with our listeners.
Yeah. Well, back in, I guess, 2021 when we got
Mm-hmm.
together, I was very caught up in what I thought was the right thing to do. And I had this really strong grip on trying to control things and make things work. And
Mm-hmm.
I would do that at the expense of everything else. My body, my health, and I didn't take a second to pause. I was always fighting with reality. I was fighting, I was in extensive pain, and I
Mm-hmm.
had all sorts of fun symptoms
Mm-hmm.
that were unexplainable at the time by doctors. And I was in and out of the hospital and the emergency room, and I did finals in there and wrote papers in there, and I never I never said die. I don't know if that's the term. I never said I I wouldn't give up, and I don't think that was a lack of surrender. That wasn't a, everyone else might have been like, "Wow, that's so impressive," but it was killing me.
Yeah.
And I was constantly fighting with my reality and fighting with my
Mhm.
body and fighting with you.
Yes, yes, you did fight with me, Allie. We wrestled hard for years. Yeah, yeah. And for me, being someone who was working with you as your coach and also functional practitioner, I was observing the patterns. And I'm a puzzle piecer. I'm a super sleuth detective, actually, very much like you. So, but for a period of time and our work together, you were working a bit against me because there was this subconscious, almost like subconscious desire to outwit everybody
Mm,
who tried to help you because I could see I picked up on this along our work together that you were determined to get better, and that was what you said, but there was this subconscious patterning that you were still gripping so tightly to where you didn't quite believe you could. You
mm,
weren't quitting. You have no quit in you, and I have no quit in me, which is why the two of us stuck together for so long and we wrestled and I became your match,
yeah.
which was just God's divine orchestration and bringing us together. But you were really fighting against that underlying belief that you weren't worthy, that you were not enough, that you are not lovable, right?
Mhm.
And so all of the wrestling and the fighting that showed up for you in these physical symptoms that were so ramped up were coming really from that deep, deep, deep root of you living outside of alignment with your divine design and not accepting truth. Right.
Mm,
So we know that the body follows the mind and there's a strong mind body connection. But in order for the mind to lead us into greener pastures or out of dis-ease,
mm,
the mind absolutely has to be led by truth. So it took a while for you to even grasp truth or to hear it at all. You would argue with it.
Mm-hmm.
It would come into, Ally, you're loved. Ally, you're seen. Ally, you don't need to earn your 4.0 worth in this world. You can lay the high bar down, Ally. Let's bend it up and throw it in the garbage. And we would bend it up and throw it in the garbage
I'd take it
over
right
and
back.
over. You would take it right back out. And with all your strength, you would straighten
Be
that
like, look,
bar.
and it's so useful.
Yes, it's so useful. And then back in the cycle, we would go right back in the cycle. And just so our listeners have an idea a little bit of this cycle, I could just give them an example of what I would
Go
see
for
and
it.
what I would observe.
Yeah,
And there were no amount of supplements that could override this cycle. But you were in college and you would easily distract yourself with other people's drama. And you're very sensitive, and your sensitivity is your superpower. And we know that all of our superpowers have shadow sides. And when we're not aware of it, we can be living into the shadow side. So you're very, very sensitive. And so you feel into the energy of others, and you would involve yourself in drama. And there's a lot of drama in college environments. And then you would soak up other people's energy, and that would get you all rampy, right? And so you'd be rampy and emotionally dysregulated, which would create some anxiety in your body. And when you were anxious, you would get nauseous and you wouldn't eat. And when you came to me, you still were actively bulimic. So there was vomiting on board on top of physiological reasons that you would be vomiting. So the vomiting would mess with your blood sugar. And anybody who's struggled with blood sugar knows that when your blood sugar is dipping low, it creates anxiety. So more anxiety, right? So the more anxious you would get, the more it would ramp up your pain. So your neuropathy would increase. It might go from a 5 to a 7 or an 8. We got really familiar with with numbers because that's how we would track things, right? So now your neuropathy is worse. And then you'd try and go to bed, but you were so wired, you couldn't sleep. So then you'd be up for the majority of the night. And now, we're running on no sleep. So we would have no reserve. So now we're not sleeping and we're even more anxious. Our body is even more inflamed. And then that might trigger your dysautonomia. So we've got dysautonomia going on, but being Ally, we must push through that. We're not going to honor our body being in dysautonomia. No. And now we're vomiting, which you've got some reasons for vomiting. You're very nauseous, and that would trigger the eating disorder vomiting that would get in your head. And then you'd take your baseball bat out, metaphorical baseball, and start beating yourself up because now I'm throwing up again. I suck. So now you're beating yourself up, and you struggled with histamine issues too.
Yeah.
So all of this, we would talk
And
about. Oh my goodness, we go get an EpiPen because now you're in anaphylaxis. So we're just in full on anaphylaxis because we're feeding it. And so you would just feed it. And you would feed it with this high bar. I suck. I'm not good enough. I have to be perfect. Ally, do you think maybe we could take some time to just get your body some rest that it needs and break this cycle? Absolutely not. No, I have 4 exams tomorrow that I have to get a 4.0 to continue being good enough, right? And I have a sailing race that I can't rest for. And so, no, I have to do all of these things. And so this cycle would become your vicious cycle where you would go round and round and round and round. And underneath all of it was this underlying belief driving it that you are not worthy of rest, that you are not good enough unless you perform. So you have to perform. And you were the one determining what the performance had to be. Right? This underlying belief that you're not lovable. So therefore you need to serve other people and involve yourself with other people all the time. You can't take time just for yourself because you're not good enough if you're not serving other people and helping other people and fixing other people.
Mistakes in that.
Never make mistakes. You cannot make a mistake, right? And so it was just this absolute vicious cycle until you came to a place where, it was your dark night of the soul moment where you were faced with the reality of almost dying, right? And I think that was your big, big divine call up and wake up when
Intervention.
you almost died. Yeah, where you were faced with your own choices. So, what was for you the hardest part? Was it the physical symptoms or what was happening in your mind about the physical symptoms?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you, the pain and the physical
Yeah,
symptoms were crazy making.
you had serious pain. I want our listeners to know, like, I
It
mean,
was
out of
it
all the
was
clients I ever
years
worked with,
of
definitely my
nerve
most
pain,
challenging.
being
Hmm.
it felt like being, like, electrocuted and burned at the
Yeah.
same.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't realize how bad it was until I got
Hmm.
relief, but the fighting with the reality of what was going on and the fighting with my nervous system and against everything and the constant torment of
Hmm.
my brain was horrible. And
Yeah.
to this day, when symptoms arise, when things don't go according to plan, when my body has a flare up, that is always what's the hardest part. It's always the stories that come along with
Mm.
what's going on and not actually what's going on. And I was just petrified on a level that was so cellular that
Mhm.
it there was nothing that was going to pull me out of it because I
Mhm.
was getting EpiPenned multiple times a week, and
Yes.
towards the end there, like, I I couldn't sleep. I was on so many narcotics and things to make me go up and down, and there was nothing that was going to help
Yeah.
besides me realizing that I was actually held by God the whole time
Mhm.
and that I was actually divinely safe, and there was there was a plan, but also there was peace, and I needed to be able to feel that in my body and understand that there
Yeah.
wasn't anything to be afraid of.
Yeah.
And that took, you know, a near death experience and,
Mhm.
a heart attack to get that into my nervous system.
Mhm.
And it didn't all get better after that. I think that that's really what's important to say. My health
Yeah.
just didn't just magically get better. It actually got worse in a lot of
Mhm.
ways after the initial initial kind of divine intervention.
Mhm.
But my trust
Mm.
and faith and surrender
Mhm.
became to materialize because everything fell apart after that.
Yep.
I had to leave grad school. I had to,
Yeah.
um, my relationship ended.
Yep.
I had to move.
Yeah. You
Uh,
were living in Hawaii and you were on scholarship in a PhD program. And that
years later.
required you to let go, let go, let go of a lot. And that meant letting go of your pride,
Right.
of the external things that were reinforcing that you were valuable, that you were worthy, that you were good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you
And there
moved
was
back
only
home.
like the plan that I thought was going to lead to success.
Well, that right there, what you just said, Ellie, letting go of the plan, right? So you had this plan. You were on a like a scripted trajectory. You were going to get your PhD and then you
Oh,
were going
master. That's
your master's.
then go
Yeah,
get it.
your master's and then the PhD. And, it was all laid out for you. So, quote unquote, perfectly. And you needed to step away from that. You
Yeah.
had to come to that decision on your own. I know working with you, and you know that you didn't just work with me, you worked with me and Molly.
Mhm.
When you came to me, Molly was mentoring me, and Molly had said to me, without me saying anything to her, I know this one scares you, Jen, and I will help you. And I'm like, How do you know she scares me? She shouldn't scare me, but
I'm just you,
I'm like,
25
oh,
years younger.
yeah, exactly. It was just my old self, and there were a lot of things that Molly was helping me with that I know that she could see in you. So as she was helping me, and she and I would wrestle, and that gave me the confidence to be able to stand really strong in truth with you. And one of the things that Molly would say to me was Allie needs to get off this crazy train. I'm like, yeah, no shit. But I can't tell her that. Like, you don't understand, Allie. Talk about strong-willed, strong-minded.
Used to say, "What's gonna change?"
What's going to
And I
change?
remember
Hmm.
before, like, the last semester that everything happened,
Yeah.
I remember being like, "Jen, I lightened my course load."
Yeah. Great. Awesome.
And
Hmm.
but I took on 2 different other, like, internship things, like
Yeah. Hmm.
but then,
Hmm.
no, that's fine, I'll have more time to rest.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The summer that you came home and you got a summer job sailing. Like I was like, oh, that's so different. Great,
No,
Ellie.
I was working 80-hour weeks and
Yeah, like oh, that's really different.
yeah, yeah.
That's not what I'm talking
Need
about.
the adrenaline shot.
Right. I need the adrenaline. And the important I think the important lesson for me too, being someone that was holding this space for you and coaching, was that this was your journey, that this is your journey, that it was never my job to tell you what to do, to drag you to where I could see you could be, right? To
Yes.
force you to do it. And all of that was your choice. The outcome for you was yours. It was enough that I could see the possibilities for you ahead and just hold that encouraging space for you to keep going and then challenge you with questions. So when you came to that on your own, that was so, so powerful. And I love that you shared, and I want to hear a little bit more about it, how that breaking point for you of your first level of surrender, where
Yeah.
you dropped in and you said, okay, I will walk out in faith, walk away
Mhm.
from what I know, right? I know it's not working, but it is still safe to me because I know it. I'm going to step away from that, and I'm going to step forward in faith. You doing that was a massive level up for you, and you let go,
Yeah.
and your physical symptoms didn't just poof disappear, right?
Mhm.
You had to enter into a period of time that was going to take however long it was going to take, and that was another divine call up and invitation for you, was to let go of the timeline, to let go of the details.
Mm.
And you were someone who always loved a good plan. You liked the plan, you liked the script, right? You wanted to know what is this going to look like? And you had to let go of all of that and just learn how to be,
Yeah.
and learn how to be held in love and receive that love in a way that you never had before. So can you share with us a little bit about that for you?
Yes. I first just wanna say that
Mhm.
you I think your role, I used to think that you were the one, like, holding, because I could have given up on this relationship so many
Mhm.
times, and I
Mhm.
may have tried.
Oh,
Uh,
no, yes, and there were a few times where I actually pushed you to try, because
yeah,
I wanted you to
yes,
own it
yeah,
and to realize, like, we're not gonna do this, even though we wrestled, we're not gonna do this wasting time thing
yeah,
anymore. Mhm.
exactly. But I used to think that you were holding the, like, candle in the
Mm,
darkness
mm,
and the torch,
mm,
and that was you could see in me,
mhm,
you just held space for that light in me,
mm,
and that was you never gave up on me, and I think that
mm,
was this reflection of, like, you were reflecting God's love onto me
mm,
in the sense that you were like, I'm you're not like, you're never gonna give up, and that was, I'm never gonna give up on you, and
mhm,
that was kind of that first feeling. I mean, I got this from my mom and many people in my life, but that was
mhm,
like this really beautiful feeling of that first bit of faith. And so
mm,
then when that moment came, um, it was I didn't have a lot of control.
mm,
All I knew was that I had this experience of almost dying and of peace. And then when I came back to, the ego and old stories came racing in, but I didn't have a lot of control. Things just kind of started to fall apart. And I didn't have any physical capacity left to try and put them together. And it was dark and I was heartbroken and I was panicked and I was crying all the time and I was in so much pain. But I never went into anaphylaxis again. I completely was just like, okay. And I spent so many nights crying on the floor, like begging God to take this away and to just give me some relief. I woke up anxious for the day because I was actually facing the symptoms now instead of trying to run and fight them. So I was like just letting it happen and there was nothing I could do. There was no one there was no band-aid, there was no partner to band-aid it. There was no my family couldn't like they could support me, but they couldn't take it away. There was nothing but me raw and open, and it just came flooding in. And I was anxious and but I'd force myself to eat and I had to force myself to calm down. I picked up a paintbrush again and it was slow and I tell myself and even talking about this back then is that as painful as that time was, it was in each moment I would be in that pain, in that level of fear or despair. And I would be like, okay, can I find some sort of peace with this? Can I do this forever? In the moment of, well, I didn't die, so I'm here for some sort of reason. And so can I make a little bit more space for this? Can I drop in those nights of just lying in bed and not being able to sleep in an excruciating pain? Can I soften into the pain? If this isn't going to go away, how can I make peace with it? How can I put a little bit more love into the cells that are screaming and at me? And yeah, over time, things calmed down. And over time, I received more medical help and I started to understand what was happening. You saw the nervous system dysregulation piece, and I thought that was who I was. I thought I was a horrible person. I thought that
Like that was your
I was
fault
so
for being that.
broken.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I was crazy. And my brother was instrumental in this time period for me because he also has dealt with chronic illness. And he used to say, okay, well, what if you go crazy? And he was like, so what if the pain doesn't end? And it was almost like it took its power away because I'd be like, oh, he's like, well, if that's the worst thing, what if? Are you still, are you still going to be okay? Are you still held? And that was kind of the moments that brought me peace were not the moments that the pain went away. They were the moments that I stopped fighting with reality and I was like, okay. And obviously when the pain started to get better, it was great, but it was it was the moments that I started to surrender.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds to me like those moments were moments where you stepped into acceptance versus resistance. Because when we're in that resistant state to whatever is, we're perpetuating the suffering.
Yes.
And when we drop that and we drop into acceptance of what is, this is here, this is what is right now, that's where we drop the resistance that's perpetuating the suffering and we can receive peace. There's a peace that surpasses our human understanding that is there. So multiple things can be true at the same time, but we can be anchored deeply in peace. We can be anchored in hope that we're not alone, that we are loved, right? That God is in this moment. And there still can be pain, but we're not resisting it and feeding it. And that's really the point at which we break this cycle. When we're in resistance, and this was a pattern that I know you would repeat and feed, that where you're like what I was talking about earlier with even the mind and the body and the physical symptoms and all of that that would ramp up. But we take something and now we're globalizing it. It's becoming bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger because you're focusing so much on it. And I love how Quinn helped you to take that power away from the things. And when we're giving power to anything outside of one power, right? That's God, love, our source. When we're giving power away, we're we are creating the separation. There is no separation between us and God, but we're creating a separation, and that's where we're in fear. There is no fear with God, none. So anytime that we're feeling fearful, that we can use that alone as a divine tap on the shoulder to say the invitation, right? Hey, you're giving power. You're giving power to your neuropathy. You're giving power to your dysautonomia. You're giving power to it. Why are you giving power to it? Can we, and I love how you talked about in this moment, can we just soften a little bit? When your body would start to flare, or even now, Allie, because you're a human, right? And you've got, physiological conditions, there's things. And there are many people listening who have physiological things, right? We can call them limitations, we can label them with disease dynamics, and we are open to miracles. God is all, we have access to that. And what if this stays? What if this is with me, right? While I'm here on this human plane and it doesn't go away. So, what are some of those thoughts that will tempt you and in the past may have overtaken you when your body starts flaring?
Well, yeah, even just the last few months I'm someone who has experienced both miracles
Yeah. Yeah. You
in
have.
my healing journey and repetitive cycles. And in the last few months, and probably the reason I didn't really want to come on the pod have been challenging because I've had a lot of patterns of dysregulation come out and symptoms that haven't been in my life for a bit of almost I had like a year of relief. And my brain still wants to go into the space of, oh my God, I'm dizzy and I can't get out of bed. I'm never going to be able to work again. I'm never going to make money. I'm never going to be able to, I want to sail a lot. I'm never going to be able to be out on the water. I'm never going to be able to help people. I'm just going to be completely stuck in this whole experience. And it's constant, and it always comes back, and all of these things. And it just becomes kind of this globalization of fear. And the fear it's painstaking. And something that I will say is that I now have a better understanding of my limbic brain and the way that my body enters into a fight or flight response, and how that feels like heaven or hell, and
Ooh,
how
share.
that feels like hell when I am in a panic state. Even like I had like 3 days, like this happened this weekend, of 3 days of absolute fear and panic, and I needed to run, I needed to hide, I needed to fight. And I didn't know who I was fighting, what I was fighting, or where I was going to go. And it's dark, and it's like this cloud is like a veil of kind of darkness, and it's not the whole truth. And even though our bodies they're animals, our limbic brain is an animalistic system. We've evolved, we have these great prefrontal cortexes, and we're able to do complex thought processes, but we still have an emotional, like, infant brain. And so to understand a little bit more, maybe my nervous system is a little more sensitive than everyone else or other people. I'm sure a lot of us have sensitive nervous systems, but maybe with the dysautonomia, it's a little bit more sensitive. And so when that fight or flight comes and the veil darkens, if I can just notice that that's what's happening, that it's not the whole story, that even though my fear response is telling me that I am living in hell, there is still this divine connection to God. My soul can still plug in whenever I want. And it's actually always plugged in. I just can use my brain to remember that it's okay, that I am safe, and that there is, the spirit is within every cell of my being. And that's what's holding me. In the space between the electrons, that's what's holding me. And that's where I'm safe. And it's not about discounting that experience and bypassing the experience. And we talked about earlier that when Jesus was being crucified, he wasn't discounting. He was thirsty. He was in pain. He was bleeding. And Luke says that he said that, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. And it was, everyone can interpret that how they wish. But for me, it's like, I'm still yours. God, I am still yours and you still got me. And I'm okay. Even if I don't know what this is for, but there is miracles in the dark, like in the pain, in the dysregulation. I mean, all of Jesus' story of his betrayal, getting to that point of crucifixion, could be looked at in a sense of that was all divine miracles. God was in all of that. So why would God not be in your pain, in your dysregulation? And if I can take a step back and zoom out and be like, okay, well, the world doesn't hate me. I'm not crazy. There's a biological aspect to this. And I'm also a soul. I am both human and I am both unlimited. And I'm not going to pretend that my brain and my understanding of the world is superior to God's, because we have limited brains. Not to quote more scripture, but my thoughts are not your thoughts, and neither are my ways your ways. And so if we are thinking about God in a limited sense, if we are making our own ego the ruler of what's going on, we're limiting our souls, and we're limiting God's presence in our heart and in our soul and in the world, in our life. And so I don't know if I've figured out how to get out of the spiral as much as I've begin to consciously practice how to surrender within the spiral, how to zoom out, how to see the hurricane for what it is and not endlessly spin in the low pressure system of my thoughts, if that makes sense.
That makes so much sense. I mean, Ally, that is your process. That's your process for breaking the cycle and for getting out of the spiral that sucks you down, 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 and the globalization that ramps it all up and amplifies the pain and amplifies the anxiety. Instead, you're looking for truth, right? And you're anchoring your thoughts based on truth. You're allowing truth to guide the thoughts, right? And then the body begins to follow from there. That's it. You shared with me,
Yeah.
pardon?
It gets to be led.
It does. It gets to be led, right? We're being led by the Spirit instead of us trying to take control and lead. That's us dropping out of our carnal mind and allowing the divine mind of God to take the reins in this situation. And it's uncomfortable, right? And I think a lot of people run from discomfort.
Yes.
They distract themselves. That's a way to run from discomfort. We will try and control and figure it all out. I know that that's one of your strategies too when you're really in your head is to get out of your own head and looking at your own physical self and trying to figure it all out. And you look for truth in creation. And because you're someone who is so fascinated by the weather, and not only fascinated by it, but you have a lot of education with your oceanography degree, but you look to weather patterns. And I would love for you to share some of that with our listeners, because I think it's brilliant. And while our listeners, not everyone listening, might have the same understanding and fascination with weather, they might use that strategy to look for patterns in creation. Because when we see other patterns in creation, we're seeing truth too, because the creator is in awe. So please share with us your weather patterning
Yeah.
strategy.
Well, definitely. First, I'll connect that to my surrender process. Is in in the moments of pain and dysregulation, and you know what my brother always said. It's like I usually start with, "Can I do this forever?" And time isn't really real, so forever is really in the present moment right now. And so that's like my first step. And then my second step is to realize that nothing lasts forever. That really the world and change is the only constant. This too shall pass. I have that tattoo. But I look for that in evidence within the natural systems of the planet. And if we zoom as far out as possible, the Earth undergoes interglacial and glacial periods of cold and then hot and warming and cooling over hundreds of thousands of years. And that is the background of the timeline of Earth. So even to just think about that is that things cool, things warm, things come, things go. And there's always a bigger plan. I mean, humanity has only been here for a very short amount of time. And so that already takes me out of myself and being like, oh, okay. And even if, even fear around global warming and all of these things, I mean, it's bigger than us. If we were to stop pumping carbon into the atmosphere tomorrow, it would still take almost 100,000 years, depending on what math and data you use, for that carbon to end up back in the rocks, for the cycle of the carbon cycle to balance itself. And then in the day-to-day scale, I look at the water cycle, the atmosphere, low pressure systems moving in and out of our awareness, and the clouds. And sometimes it's as simple as I step outside and I look at the clouds and I see, oh, that's moving away from me. Oh, the wind aloft is moving that way. And the surface wind is moving this way. And that grounds me in a sense, because I'm like, whoa, like if I can zoom out and start thinking about what's happening around me in this beautiful creation that we just get to be a part of, it becomes way less important if I sell a painting or if I have it figured out or if I know what's going to happen tomorrow or if I know when, my back pain is going to go away. It's bigger. The cycles and the history and even the fact that we live on this earth, we're on a planet that has liquid water and an atmosphere and is the perfect location away from its star. That in itself is a miracle. And so if I can remember that my own existence is a miracle, just like the clouds, just like the wind, just like the waves in the water, it becomes so much simpler. And I'm not discounting any of the devastation that some of these systems bring, hurricanes and these natural disasters and climate change. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying, like, what would I rather focus on? Would I rather focus on the fear, or would I rather marvel at the power of the creator? And it's way cooler to think about it from that perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very powerful reminder of how big and infinite our God is. When you're looking at something outside of yourself that is even bigger.
Yeah.
I love that strategy so much. That made me think about here. One of the things that Molly told me many, many years ago, and this was for myself, when I would be in a place of wrestling and I would call it my funk because I'd get in these like really dark, funky places and I'd have my own swirls in them. And she had said to me, please notice that when you stop focusing on yourself, your fears, misperceptions, misbelief, lack of skills, et cetera, and you choose to focus on God at the top, everything changes. When funk rolls in, it's a clear invitation to complete a self-check and assess where your focus is. Where is your truth? The power of the mind is powerful, right? So whatever can help us to get out of staring at ourself and our limitations, our perceived limitations, our current struggle, our current pain, that helps us to take God too out of this limited box that we're putting God in and saying, oh, wait, you're infinite. You are so much bigger than this right here. So I'm going to stop staring at this and I'm going to stare at you. And whatever it is that helps me to connect to you, I'm going to use that. And weather patterns for you are powerful. That's
For me, I
awesome.
have to intellectualize it and feel
Mhm.
it before. Sometimes I have to busy my brain so that I
Mm.
feel it in my heart. But some people are simple and they can just go, my mom, you just have to put her in the forest and she doesn't need to know how the nutrients are getting from the roots into the bark and how photosynthesis is the process of all these things. It's just innately makes sense. So it doesn't really matter the way in which you do it. It's just the remembering. And
It is. It's remembering. I love that so much. And as human beings, we forget. And it's okay that we forget.
Mhm.
Yep. And the more that we're in it and the more intentional we are with how we live our life. And that's why it's so important for us to live our life with spiritual practices in place, whatever they are, whatever helps us to stay anchored in truth, to be reminded of truth. They help us in those moments of forgetting so that we can remember and remember perhaps a little bit faster than we did the
last
time before, than the last time when we were stuck in it for a longer period of time. And I know for you, and I've continued to reflect this back on you, Ally, when you are in those moments of forgetting, of how far you've come, of how anchored you are in the truth. Sometimes we need people to just remind us of what the truth is. Like, can you remind me again? Because I'm forgetting. Can you hold space for me while I'm in this process right now? Can you stand witness to me? Sometimes all we need is for someone else to stand witness, to be that space holder. But sometimes we do need other people to remind us of truth inside of ourselves, remind us of how far we've come. And I have reminded you often on how far you've come. Let's not forget how your swirls in the past would have you ending up in the ER, right? You catch them so much faster. And you also have this beautiful ability today to be in them, right? I'm in it. And to name it, like here I am, I'm in it, and I know I'm in it, and I know that this too shall pass. And it's really uncomfortable right now. And this is what I need in this moment. This is what I need from maybe it's a person in your life, or maybe it's a physical need, or maybe it's just a need for some space or for a way to connect with God. And I know for you, nature, sand, sun, if you can't sail, sailing, water, yeah, those are all ways that you connect to the divine. And they all help you to remember, which is so important. So, Allie, you've sat in the question a lot. What if this never changes? What did you discover in that question itself? I really want our listeners to perhaps ponder that for themselves the next time something is coming up for them. Like, what is your biggest discovery there in the what if this never changes?
I end up usually, if I can really embody that question, I end up back at gratitude because it can be as simple as an example was I got concussed a few months ago, and that was probably kind of the catalyst to some of the physical experiences I've been having. And I was spending a lot of time with an eye mask on and uncomfortable, and there was headaches and all the things. And it was by no means the worst pain I've ever experienced. It was not, it was uncomfortable, but I had a timeline on my healing, right? I wanted this concussion to go away in a certain amount of weeks or days. I was like, this is going to be the fastest I've ever healed something. God, I'm going to connect with God so much that's going to create a miracle. And I spent a lot of time in prayer and meditation. And then the symptoms didn't go away on the same timeline that I wanted to. And I got to a moment where I was like, well, what if I was like, I just want to leave my bed and I just want to go surfing. And I'm like, well, what if I can't? What if this is going to last forever? And obviously it's not, but what if this is going to last forever? And I'm lying there and I soften into it and I'm like, what if it's going to last forever? And then in that moment, I'm like, well, this isn't that bad. My bed's near a window and there's birds chirping. The wind is rustling and there's breeze. And I have a weighted blanket and water and food. And then all of a sudden, just like the basicness of it all. I can walk outside and feel the sun on my face. And if I need to go back and rest, that's okay. And so obviously there's different versions of this, but all of a sudden it happened yesterday or 2 days ago. I had a syncope episode picking up my brother from the airport. It was scary because I had just finished driving and I started spiraling. And then I was like, okay, well, what if this does last forever? What if these episodes don't get better? And what if this feeling of confusion and anxiety and dysregulation lasts? And then I'm like, well, it's okay because I'm safe. And all of a sudden, his presence became such a gift. Instead of being like annoyed that I was picking him up from the airport, I was like, oh my God, thank God my brother is here. That's so wonderful. And thank goodness that he was there when that happened. And he got me food. And so like, it doesn't change the circumstance. It changes my focus on the circumstance. And instead of looking at all of the bad things about if it lasts forever, of when will I work? How do I provide? All of these things, I focus on the good things or the things that are more filled with gratitude.
Which amplifies the light, which amplifies the good. And it also helps to bring us into presence. So dysregulation feeds that loop, but presence interrupts it. So using gratitude is a way for us to become present. And presence is our awareness of what is in the moment. And God is here in this moment. There's love. Love is the only thing that is real. So when we seek it, we will find it. When we find it, we can receive it, and it can act as an anchor for us, and in and of itself can become a cycle breaker to the dysregulation. And as you said, it doesn't always take away the circumstance. We can't choose or control all of our circumstances here, but we can choose what we do with them. We can choose how we perceive them. And that is a beautiful, beautiful example. And I know that that's really helpful for people who are listening, because when we're wrestling, we're in a state of resistance. And then, as you've shared beautifully on this podcast, you're also focusing on all of these things you can't really control, and you're giving them all of this power. And you now feel like crap. You feel that much worse than if you were to drop into presence, seek the good. In seeing it, you're receiving it, you're amplifying it. That's so beautiful, Ally. So you've shared a lot with us here today on the podcast about your process. I thought of this because, this painting, for those of you listening, I'll have a link below of Ally's beautiful artwork. And one of the things that you've stepped into, Ally, in this whole season of your life that's been going on now for 2 years, right? It's been 2 years. Is it 2 or 3? Yeah, like 2. I think it's
It's
2
March. Yeah,
since, yeah, it's
2 years ago,
since
exactly.
you, 2 years. It is your 2-year anniversary and stepping into a daily surrender in your life, stepping into a life where you're walking out, you're getting out of the boat, you're walking on water, right, in faith. And it was 2 years ago where you and I had a coaching call, and it was right after your near-death experience, and where you received epinephrine through an IV because you had gone to the hospital in yet another anaphylactic episode, and that prompted a heart attack. And so you left your body and you saw yourself on the hospital bed there. And that was your big wake up. That was your, oh my gosh, I can't keep doing this. You know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. And you and I had had a coaching call right before I went to Italy. And I had said to you, Ally, sometimes you just have to jump, right? Like you're on the cliff and you don't know what to do. And yeah, you don't know what the whole plan is. You're not going to know what the whole plan is, but you're not going to jump and then get sucked down into some big abyss of nothingness. That's not going to happen. It is a jump that you're taking in faith, right? You're choosing to move forward in faith. And when I was in Italy, I was looking up, I was laying on the edge. Oh, whoops.
So you can see
Oh, here.
the jump or
The jumping. Oh, okay. So the
but-
jumping. Yeah, I'll put a link to
There you
your
go.
artwork in the show notes, but because most people can't even see this unless you're watching on YouTube. But in what I had said to Ally was you got to just jump anyway. And I was laying on the edge of the sea in a little town in Tuscany called Maremma. And I looked up at this beautiful cliff and I just snapped a picture of it and I texted it to you. And you texted me back within minutes a sketch of this painting. And you said, that's my cliff. And this painting really was painted over months of your process. This is like your initial process. And what I really love is, again, for those of you listening, look up Ally's artwork because her artwork has also been what she has faithfully stepped into in this season of her life. She is an incredibly talented artist, and you did not think your art was, worthy of you investing in and making a career out of because that wasn't intellectual enough and good enough, right? And you've been embracing it, and God has been so good, and you have blessed so many people, including me, with these beautiful gifted soul paintings that I have mine hanging on the wall. But this painting became a painting that I've used countless times in guiding people on freedom journeys and coaching sessions. I've told you that you are with me. And almost every time I text you and I say, you joined me again today, Ally. I brought out your painting during a client's freedom journey because this is the journey that we all are invited to take. The sitting on the edge of the cliff in a ball of fear. And are you going to stay there? We can choose whether or not we stay there. Or are we going to take a leap and trust that in the rebirth process where we're going back into the womb, and there's a lot that happens in the womb. I mean, the womb space has been where you've been. But this is where we get to rise up into the beautiful rising phoenix here. And I believe that we cycle this many, many times. And it's actually very reflective of the resurrection process. The resurrection process invites us to pick up our cross, to carry it to our crucifixion, to die to our false identities. And when we do that, we are stepping forward in faith and trusting that we will resurrect into a new creation, that there is no death, that there is nothing to fear. And we go through that many, many, many times. Yeah. So I wanted to share that here because
this okay, so I have this thing that my mom got me from her trip to Asia. And it's the
diving off the cliff
and hangs. And so she's just, it's a ceramic woman flying, their arms outstretched. Or man, I think it's genderless, but yeah, so that's I wanted to show you that.
Yeah, so share that. Like, share with us, what does that mean for you? I know the painting is called The Rise, or Daring to Rise.
Dare to
Correct.
Rise.
Dare,
Yeah.
Dare to Rise. Okay, Dare to Rise. The painting is called Dare to Rise. And, what is that? What does it mean to you?
Yeah, it's it's the moments that you choose to let go. It's the moments that you choose to be like, okay, this is yours. I'm trusting you, I'm trusting me, I'm trusting. And, you could leap off the cliff 15 times a day. It doesn't have to be this big moment of, I know that mine and the original creation of the piece was this big moment of jumping. And I remember that call that we had, and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, Jen, but I'm just going to let it be. But it's every moment that we remember. For me, it's the first stroke of the paintbrush on the canvas. It's the first word you write. It's whatever that is for you, and stepping into it in this daring greatly, daring to step forward with faith. And sometimes you got to remember again 15 times a day, maybe more. And the one thing I will say, and I want to make sure that when you were talking, it kind of reminded me that if you are in a space that you feel like you're drowning, that it's completely overwhelming, and that you have no idea if you even jumped off the cliff. And that's such a beautiful time to be in. And I know for me, even in the moments that I experience right now, I want to escape it. I want to run. And in this conversation, I'm remembering that if you can be present to that level of discomfort and pain, almost, I'm not saying romanticize it, but almost like celebrate that moment, it becomes your own sense of resilience. It becomes what you can both share with others, but also look back on and remember, well, I did that. But if you bypass it and you distract yourself from it, you won't remember those times, because there are giant blank periods of memory in my life of pain, because I've been dealing with chronic illness since I was 12. A lot of that time, I don't remember. I don't remember what was going on. I don't remember but that moment of real surrender 2 years ago, I remember all of the pain after that. And it's in that remembering, it's in that presence that I had with the agony that I can draw upon it for strength. And if I wasn't present at that time, I think I would just repeat it until I was. And so if you're in that space, even if it's not gigantic, even if it's just a moment, it's not, don't escape. You're safe right here and right now. And I'm telling myself this, I'm telling you this, but it's also quite beautiful, because this is your testimony. This is your story. This is you, but it's for you. It's for God. It doesn't have to be some story you wrap up in a pretty bow. It's never is. The story's never done.
It's never done. It's not done. Our soul is eternal. One of the things that you and I have discussed a lot is healing, and what is healing actually, and what is the end goal to healing? And are we doing healing? Are we doing it right? Like, are we efforting healing? And really what I have come to see healing as being is, it's a process, of course, but it really begins not when the symptoms go away or when they disappear or when you no longer battle X, Y, and Z. And that might come along the journey, but it really begins when we stop fighting ourselves and when we surrender in, when we drop that resistance. Like, that's what activates the path forward of healing. And we use the term a lot. And I also encourage people and myself to not hold so tightly to the word. Like, it's not a protocol. It's not a process that we can apply and it will work the same for all of us. It's really not. It is a journey that we intentionally step into and we embrace, but it doesn't actually start until we stop fighting ourselves, until we're willing to drop our old stories, until we are willing to be in process and out of resistance. And I can say that that's like when I saw that happen in you, that's when you're healing, like whatever, that was when
The
it really
manifestation
was.
of physical.
Yes, it was when, it was really activated, because that's when you consciously and willingly stepped into the journey.
Hmm.
A lot of people, I've worked with people for almost 15 years in the coaching space, and there was a good chunk of time where I would attract a lot of very complex clients, and I learned a lot from them. I mean, you were one of my very biggest teachers, Ally.
Hmm.
And you were one of my very biggest teachers into the conversations that I have today, into what I see and believe is true today. And I'm a truth seeker. That's just how God created me. And so I'm constantly questioning and seeking truth and challenging and saying, well, what's underneath that? And what's underneath that? And what's underneath that? But for a period of time, a lot of the clients that I would have that, again, were complex cases. And when I say that, I'm saying they're coming with their big list of symptoms and disease diagnoses. The ones who weren't able to activate healing were the ones who were not yet ready to drop their story, and they were in resistance. So they could say, yeah, hi, I'm hiring you and I would like to heal. I want relief from my symptoms, but they were not an active participant in that. And that active participation is everything that we've discussed here today. And we can't make someone get there any faster. We can hold space and we can hold them in confidence and we can hold them in truth and we can encourage. But that is something that has to come from inside them. And there's an ownership in that. So, oh, Ally, this conversation has been so rich, so beautiful. I'm in awe. I'm in awe. Where you are today is where I could see years ago. Of course, all the details were not mine to see or know at all. And it's just such an honor to stand witness to your rise and to stand witness to the beauty that you bring to this world in being you and allowing yourself to be you and loving you and accepting you and owning that you are valuable and that you have so much to bring to this world, whether you are resting in bed, right? Or you're painting a beautiful painting or you're sailing on a sailboat. None of that really matters. You are you. And you are so beautiful. And yeah, I love how God works. And I love that He brought you into my life all of those years ago. Oh, Ally, it's been so fun having you on the podcast. I'm sure that we will do this again. There's so many other conversations that you and I can both have, and you have so much beautiful wisdom through your lived experiences to share with our listeners. So thank you so much, Ally. Ally, today you are doing your artwork. You are allowing God to express Himself through you through these absolutely beautiful soul paintings. I have one hanging on my office wall and I look at it every single day. And it is one of the things that really helps to remind me of why I'm here and what I'm doing here in my own process. But is there something that you want to share with our listeners about the soul paintings? I'll put the link for where they can find you in the show notes here, but share with us a little bit about the soul painting.
Yes, well, first, I just want to say thank you so much for having me. And I love you so much. And you have been such an instrumental part of my journey. And such a beautiful friendship has bloomed from it all. So I'm so grateful for that. And doing Jen's soul painting was such an amazing experience. But I talked a little bit about how we all have our own ways of remembering, of going out into the natural world and feeling creator and feeling God's presence. And we all have our own experiences of strength and resilience that we can draw upon and remember how, how God see us in the light of how God sees us, and see us from that place of love and wholeness. And so the soul paintings are kind of like a mosaic of these different elements that can remind you of both your innate strength, but also your divine love and connection. So it's everyone's is unique. So I can't really say exactly what it is, but it could be a story of transformation, or it can just be like all of the things that you love in the natural world. It could be animals. It could be, and each one is unique and different. And it doesn't even have to be super spiritually deep. Sometimes it's simple, and sometimes I bring science into it, and there's all different things. So if you're interested, you can check out my website. There's more information there. And yeah, it's a really special process, and I feel so grateful to whoever entrusts me in it, because I fall in love with you guys as I get to paint it. Like Jen's, I was just like, oh my God, like your story is so amazing. This is so amazing. And it filled up my cup with a lot of gratitude. So.
And that's one of the beautiful gifts that we get to give and receive when we get out of God's way, when we allow ourselves to be our true authentic self, and we stop living into the shoulds and the stories and all of the programming that leads to these limiting beliefs and constructs. And you've done a lot of that, Ally, which is enabling you to allow God to use you and to be this vessel for God's expression. And your paintings are an expression of the divine. And I hope that people listening to this go check out your artwork, because it is truly, truly magnificent, Ally. Thank you so much again for being here on this podcast. Anyone listening to the podcast, if this has blessed you in any way, we really appreciate your comments, like, subscribe, and share it. If you would share it with somebody who's going through something right now and could really use the wisdom that Ally has given to us today on the podcast about how to break the cycle, we would really appreciate it. Until next time, my friends, continue that daily surrendering that leads you to the abundant life. Thank you for joining me on the Daily Surrender. If today's episode spoke to you, I'd love to hear your reflections. Send me a message, share this with a friend, or leave a review. Or remember, true healing and freedom come when we let go, surrender, and trust that God's way is so much better than our way. Until next time, my friends, keep surrendering, keep rising, and keep walking in peace.